Welcome, everybody, to the Now Moment Journey podcast. And I'm thrilled to have here today Leila Ghazal, Galactic Shaman. And she's also an astrologer and a human design facilitator and many other earth healing and water healing. And I'm really looking forward to asking her a question. And this is the question that I have. Really, it's kind of like an open-ended question. And that is, what kind of like tangible benefits, like 3D physical benefits or emotional, spiritual, etc., happens when you frequently connect with either animal spirits or plant spirits or stone spirits or water, etc.? What kinds of things happen to improve your life? And it could be something really like esoteric, or it could be something, maybe a feeling or something. It doesn't have to be like it doesn't have to be a specific thing. So it could be just feelings that come up or whatever. Um, so I thought I'd just let her introduce herself as well and give her that question to answer.
Hi, Kirsten. Thank you so much, first of all, for having me back. I love being on here and talking to you, and I feel like I can literally talk about this topic for like an hour. So I'm gonna try to keep it short because I feel like I can address every single word that you mentioned. But let's just sort of start with the basics. Since we last spoke, I actually went to the Midwest. I went to Ohio to visit some family, and I'm gonna basically explain every single benefit through my answer of what has been happening with me over the past week and a half as I traveled, right? So one of the things that I do is actually I'm a grid worker. So like grid workers, I work with the earth very deeply, and I basically get sent out on missions every few months. Well, actually, it depends on the timing, but sometimes it's every few weeks, and then other times it's every few months where I get sent to a specific area on Earth to do grid work. And one of these periods was basically this week that I hadn't actually expected. So during this mission, I experienced all of the things that you mentioned. And so basically, I worked with animal spirits, I worked with plant spirits, trees in specific, and then I also worked with stone spirits and water. So just to kind of cover all the bases, I'll talk about each one, sort of separately, but I just want to kind of give you context that this is like a bigger question that I anticipated, but I'm going to do my best to cover everything. So I think the first biggest thing was working with trees, right? So being in the Midwest, I noticed that a lot of the trees are indigenous to the land. And given, the ongoing genocide in Palestine, that was, one of I went there wondering like, how can I even focus on anything else? Like I've been totally consumed by this issue for, 3+ weeks now, and I'm really unable to sort of look past it because it's such a huge mission for me to sort of speak out about it. But what I noticed is actually being in nature with the trees, watching the leaves fall, watching the light glisten on the water, and just like listening to the wind standing in the cool breeze. I mean, all of this experience not only sort of helped me ground, but also I could feel the nature itself helping me with my grief. So not only was I being held, it's almost like not only was I there to activate certain parts of the world to sort of, strengthen that connection with the planet, but I also was held in that space by nature, which was such a beautiful thing. And I didn't expect that. I expected to be going on like a work trip, but then I went there and I was held so beautifully. So I think, it's very much a reciprocal relationship when you show nature how much you are willing to put in work for the cause. Nature speaks back and it's just like, I love you too. So having a conversation with the trees, I asked them, I was just like, am I doing the right thing? Am I being too extreme or too intense in my speech and vocalization of what's been happening in the Middle East that I'm forgetting about myself? And the trees had a really sweet answer. They were like, no, because you don't speak just for the Palestinians, you speak for all the oppressed people. And, we are not able to have a direct impact on the humans as much as you do. And so this is why we're holding you in this space, because we are for your cause. Look at us. We have been here since the time of, the Native Americans, some of us. And, we would have loved to stop that from happening, but we couldn't move. And so here you are, and here, are so many people who are able to have an impact in this way. And so we are holding you in this sort of huge, role of being able to do this. And I also experienced this in the animal kingdom. I've received the same messages. I've received the same messages through dreams that I'm happy to talk about, but that also might be another long, long story. But basically, the whole sort of point of this is that nature is holding us all, but only requires our appreciation and our willingness and our desire and our love for humanity and for nature in order to really just like sink in that, just to kind of like really ground that frequency of love and, like ascension, right? Like we all ascend together through love. And so I think that has really been a beautiful experience in terms of working with the trees in particular. I also have an experience about, animals and stone spirits, but I feel like I already said so much, so I'm just going to give you a chance to speak, Kirsten.
No, well, I don't want to stop your train of thought, but I love every word of what you've been saying. And the only thing I wanted to add to that was just don't forget what you're going to say.
Oh, thank you.
Because
No, I won't forget.
really, you're on a roll, and I love it. This
Thank
is
you.
this is exactly what I was getting at, and in my own life too, because like even looking back, I'm glad you mentioned grief. I just want to mention that right quick because I bring up grief every once in a while, but I don't like to talk about it in the way that other people talk about it, because I'm not a grief counselor. I don't talk about grief in a mental way. The way I bring up grief is like what you just said, and it could just be you know, grief can be from the collective too. I mean, when thousands or let's say millions of people die, or thousands of people die, and you're an HSP, or you're an empath, or you're a psychic, or you're a shaman, or you're whatever, grid worker, or an earth healer, or any number of things, you're going to pick up on that stuff. And if you care about it, that you're going to pick up on it even more. And if you're doing healing, you're going to pick up, you get the picture. And that doesn't even count whether you're going through your own grief. So I had this experience yesterday, or I guess it was 2 days ago, when I was having a really hard time 2 days ago. I don't know why, it just was. And for some reason, I was reminded again when I went out on my walk, which, we just happen to be experiencing some extremely nice weather right now. I mean, it's always pretty nice here, but really nice, like really great time of the year. And I just really could feel the love of the trees, like you said. And I was trying to kind of do what you were doing. I was having a conversation and saying, what am I struggling with? Why is this such a problem? And it probably took me 3/4 of my walk to really get out of my monkey mind, which normally it doesn't take me that long. Normally it takes me maybe a quarter of my walk. So I get a good 3/4 of, a different level of consciousness, which is, trying to communicate with whether it's a tree spirit or water spirit or a deity that I'm, trying to communicate with. But I was able to, get some answers back. But more importantly, when I got home, I felt better about my life. Like I'm not saying all my problems are solved, but I'm just saying even just that short amount of time out, having what they call a medicine walk, and there's more layers to it than that, but I'm giving you like the short kind of summation. Like there's a real tangible benefit. Like I feel better when I get back, not just the serotonin or the the different, chemicals in your body that are natural that get lifted when you do physical exercise. Of course, that's part of it. But there's another part of it. I think when as a human being, that you can reach out to these nature spirits, and it's like having a whole network of beings that you can, they're like elders, really. They function as elders. So I'd love to hear more about what you were saying before, though.
Oh, I mean, amen. Like they're definitely elders. I mean, same with the bodies of water, same with, the wind and the elements. And I wholeheartedly, believe everything that you're saying about all of this because I felt it myself this past week. I mean, I can't recall to you when the last time was when I felt this sense of peace, right? I mean, I feel like I've been in crisis for weeks on end, and then standing next to a tree where I, feel this incredible magnetic force and this intense motherly love coming from the tree, and I'm just like, wow, I have not felt this beauty and peace in a long time. And so, definitely just really, really, really resonate with everything that you're saying. And just to kind of tie in the new experiences that I wanted to mention with the animal and the stone spirits. So just to kind of add, the element of reverence for the spirit within the the elements that we're talking about, and the trees and the animals and the living beings that I feel like we don't talk about enough. The spirit of the stones or crystals, I feel like, is not fully understood, I don't think, in the mainstream. I think whenever crystals are brought up, it's, just kind of like, oh yeah, it's just like a nice thing to have that's spiritual. But I don't think people realize what the structure of a crystal really is, in the fact that it is a perfect geometric form. It is intelligence crystallized within matter. It is basically molecules in a perfect formation that provides as much energy and high vibrational, basically, I guess I said energy, but basically, it's this soup. I can't even describe it. I'm sorry. My emotional body is so overwhelmed that I'm having a hard time reaching the mental body aspect of how to explain this. But basically, it's sacred geometry. That's basically what it is. And it's like a memory stick, right? So that we can program things through crystals, and they're so incredible in their own way that I don't think they get enough credit. And I've programmed a lot of my crystals to protect me throughout this time because I was in an environment that I wasn't used to. And so whenever I was outside, around the trees and around nature, I felt incredible. But then as soon as I would go inside of a building or a home or anything like that, my body would just freak out because of the energy that's being contained, right? It's like the chi doesn't really circulate in the same way that it does outside. And I thought that was really important to mention, not to mention all the crazy collective stuff that, we also are both talking about. I also feel that very deeply. But I think what was really helpful for me is, more so than the protection of the crystals, which in its own right deserves, a lot of attention. But the fact that I was also called to help an animal basically regain life, right? So the animal that I helped was a cat, and it basically took away my sense of helplessness, right? So, this is maybe not necessarily the spirit itself, but it was an actual living being that I was interacting with that came to me for help and was meowing and meowing, and basically was on their last few breaths and really needed some, TLC. And I was able to communicate with this animal and really help bring it back to life, that everybody around us was like, whoa, I thought this animal was going to die, but here it is, signing a new lease on life. And I'm so grateful for the ability to be able to do that, because speaking out about the atrocities happening in Gaza has made me feel extremely helpless, because it's very difficult to have movements that affect a collective, whereas when you're treating an individual, it's so much more gratifying to be able to see the changes right in front of you in real time. And so even though I may have been expressing, maybe I'm expressing sort of my interaction and relationship with the animal, the spirit of the animal within a body in, three dimensional space. I still could sense the spirit of the animal was in distress as I entered the home. So I basically, as soon as I entered, I could tell the animal was in distress. And this is not necessarily an ability that I thought I had. I've always been very strongly connected to animals. I've always loved animals, but I never knew that I had this ability to be able to pick up on what they were sensing, what they were experiencing, and being able to communicate in this direct way, which was incredibly healing for me because it really gave me that sense of, wow, I'm actually doing something for someone. I can actually help in this very real and tangible way. And it taught me that, you know, we don't always necessarily have to be advocating for people, who are super far away, when we can also help the people around us, or the animals or the beings, right? So we can also have a very tangible effect on the people around us, which will also have a, I'm sorry for those sirens. They're like really loud
Okay,
here.
you're doing great.
Oh, thank you. But basically, right, it's easy to have an effect on the people around us, which in turn will basically have this like, domino effect and affect the collective. So it's, never underestimate the small actions that you do for somebody on a daily basis. But I think, yeah, that covers everything. I mean, water's a whole new topic. I'm gonna let you talk before I just take up the whole time. So yeah.
That's what I wanted you to do. So I'm glad. That was amazing. God, you have such deep and profound experiences that are just so, it's just really nice to hear because, and I
No,
think you
thank you.
have a way of describing them that is very, it's got a lot of vitality in it, which is exactly what, an accurate description of what I would imagine, it would be like, because I mean, we can't always say what everybody feels because we're not them, but when you feel things from a different, type of consciousness, whether it is directly from the animal, or maybe it's a spirit of a crystal or something like that, or something that doesn't even have a body attached to it, it's hard to describe. And I think you're doing a really phenomenal job of that because
No, thank
you're
you so much.
no, I thank you, because I mean it's that's sort of one of my missions with this podcast, is to try and get this kind of language out there so that people can kind of have some kind of idea of, if they are experiencing things like this, that this is, there's different ways to deal with it, but there's also different ways to interpret it. What I was thinking of was when you were talking about the crystal, and that it's intelligence crystallized within matter, and the sacred geometry. It was interesting because even before we got on the call, I was thinking about the Masaru Emoto book. And I mean, I don't know the book that well. I just know that there's parts of it about the hidden language of water. And it's
Mm,
interesting that water and crystal kind of remind me of each other in the respect that they both have the ability to be programmed, and also and to hold memory. I think is a much more, I like both of
yes.
those, but and that they also obviously have an ability to transmit and store, and they do a variety of things. But I think what's interesting is when you were talking about the crystals, I kept thinking about something that's come up um, when I try to talk about crystals, which is, you know, people always say, oh, crystals are new age or stones are new age. And the thing is, they're really not, because maybe the way people talk about them, or, maybe that's new age, but the actual uh, human and stone or crystal interaction is extremely old. And if you go to any traditional society, like I'm thinking of the Peruvian Pacos right now, they use crystals all the time. And they store, like they program them, especially selenite or some kind of white charged crystal like that. And I mean, that's not the only crystal they use, but there's stones are huge with them. I mean, And that's just one group of people. So, and I mean, it's pretty much, we know about the Native Americans, they use stones all the time. So, and that's just two continents. I'm sure we could find more. So my point is that I think water always reminds me of stones too, because they tend to kind of like, I don't know why, they have similar properties for me. But so yeah, that was all I was going to say about that.
I love that. I love that because that's totally how I see them in my mind too. Because to me, you know, energy and matter are very close, right? The I understand the relationship between the two, and like that's part of the course that I'm writing. So it's one of those things where I see them as interchangeable in, with the underlying difference being like time, right? Which is a very 3D thing. So I totally agree in terms of the relationship being such an old and ancient one. I mean, even, if you even look at ancient Egypt, all of the obelisks have an element of quartz in them, which helped transmit the energy or like, even receive energy. It was very much part of the exchange of information within, it's kind of like a Tesla coil, right? It's kind of the same concept of using them as tools to communicate in the old world. And I'm sure we see this in so many more instances, but I know that the technology was very much present and prominent in ancient Egypt. So I just kind of wanted to mention that quickly. But I love the way that you connected water and crystals, because I actually was thinking about this last night, and I didn't know if I wanted to talk about it, but it was something that I really noticed. So I had a really, really, really bad migraine yesterday, and I haven't had one of these in a long time. And I was trying to trace back the reason as to why. And I realized that it's because I wasn't drinking running water. And I know this sounds a little bit strange, but you would think that, okay, headaches come from dehydration, which is yes, true. But, I didn't realize that we can also be dehydrated, not just from not drinking water, but also drinking the wrong type of water. And so if the water isn't alive, right, if it's not running, if it hasn't been oxygenated, if it hasn't been, what's the word I'm looking for? Like electromagnetized, right? Like if it's not alive, it can also cause dehydration. And so I was wondering about, the population. I was wondering if, is this why some people are, obese or have like health issues? Because I know a lot of people drink water that is bottled. And I learned recently actually from this man, this incredible person named, let me try to remember the name. Sorry, my memory is not serving me too well these days. Randy Hatton. He works with water in this, metaphysical way. And he talks about how water has been imprisoned into plastic bottles and how it basically dies and is being enslaved and sold. And I was just like, that touched me so deeply. And that was the exact time that I actually had the headache, so it was very interesting how the information kind of came through at the same time. And I realized that my body was crystallizing water that was not pure or clean or happy, and that really caused a lot of disruption in my system. So I really wanted to sort of spread this information because I thought it was so important that we understand that water is a spirit, and if we are drinking unhappy water, which makes us, I don't know, makes up like what, like 80-90% of our system, like of course it's going to affect the way that we function in the world. I mean, think about the people in Gaza who have been drinking contaminated water for like years. I mean, it's just this, yeah, it's a lot. So I know this is a big topic, but I really wanted to sort of talk about the crystallizing of water and how that can really cause illness if not, purified, magnetized, addressed, even like shown gratitude to, right? Like if we don't show gratitude to the water, it disappears. I mean, there's this whole, like Yemaya and Venus, like I don't know if you're familiar, but basically there was a period in 2020 when Yemaya was coming through very strongly and basically saying that there are droughts because you guys are not appreciating the sources of water in nature. And so I think that hit me really hard. And ever since Saturn went into Pisces, water has been like a big factor in my life. I mean, a lot of the earth healing that I do is connected to rivers and big bodies of water, including oceans. And I mean, we can even have an entire podcast about this, but yeah, just to sort of get us going on this topic. It's really, really, really big and really important.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I think maybe what we'll do is we're gonna have continue our discussion on water, and because you mentioned Yamaya, and as you were talking, you reminded me of some of the things that I do every day with tobacco, which is I pray to Mama Cocha, which is the Andean name for, the ocean. And of course, I do various things with the weather, but part of my almost daily practice, there's plenty of days where I maybe don't do it as, religiously or as frequently as I should. But part of my practice is to do offerings of some sort, either with tobacco or hair if I'm on my walk. And I try to talk about this in other channels, but even if you're near a body of water, whether Len, you and I talked about that before, where you found a body of water that you didn't even realize was there. And because, when you're in an urban environment, it's pretty hard to find, bodies of water unless they're obvious in front of you. Suburban can be a little bit easier, but, even suburban areas are very overly sterile, if you will, with landscaping that's intentionally manipulated so that it's not a natural flow of landscaping, etc. But my point is there has to be places where people can go, and if they can't go in real life, then that's when we go into consciousness with, we do consciousness work with, trance work, with shamanic journeying. But I like the combination of the two, doing the trance work or the shamanic journeying, as well as getting out in nature and leaving offerings. I mean, that's a really generic way of putting it, but I think that letting, especially Mother Earth, Mother Sea aspect, if you will, in the Nordic, with the Nordic tradition, you might call to Njordur, which is he's kind of associated with the wind and water, and there's also Ron and Ager, and there's a couple other gods that are associated with water. But you know just trying to, whatever's comfortable for you, whoever's listening, today, if you just want to say, just the spirit of water or the mother ocean or whatever, and just leaving a hair for her, because every little bit, this is like a group effort, worldwide. If everybody was just doing what you did, Leila, like just saying, doing some kind of offering for the water. I mean, I couldn't even tell you how amazing it would be, and that's just basic. I don't want to say basic. I'm not being derogatory, because sometimes when you have a million people doing something, what seems basic becomes really advanced, when you have that many people doing it. So that's a huge transmission of love to the water, which would also affect our own, like you said, our own bodies. And it's all related in my book. So I think we're going to wrap it up there, but I just wanted to say thank you, thank you, thank you so much. You just blew me away with what you told me today. It was just amazing. I loved it. And I really appreciate your discussion about these really important things that are going on, because we humans, we're here, but we really need the natural world as our friend and our guide and our elder. And guess what? The natural world needs us too. So, and they need us, like you said, the trees, you speak for the tree, in that instance, in doing your work with Gaza, or in doing your work with the water, or the cat that came along your path. I mean, it's all connected for real. I mean, that's not just a saying that people say. So I did want to mention before we go, the quiz, I'm going to put a link for my quiz. Are you an animal, plant, or stone spirit archetype quiz? And just give it a try and see if you like it. You can shoot me a DM on Instagram or Facebook, or, you know, contact me through the podcast page if you like. Let me know what you think, or if you have any questions. And I will also put a link to the most recent video I did where I basically gave some free tarot readings in this group, but also there's a labyrinth meditation. And that's very much related to kind of going into a semi-trance state, quasi-altered state of consciousness, so that you kind of feel that kind of level of consciousness as you meditate in this nature kind of setting. So I'll put the link for that too. And I also want to ask Leila if there's anything, I'm going to put her links in there where you can contact her at Galactic Blueprint, but I wanted to ask her if she had any other things to add.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I totally 100% agree with everything you said, and just suggestion for anyone, if you do have access to some sort of labyrinth, I would highly suggest it. It's a really, really magical experience to do in real life, but if you don't have access to that, no worries at all. There are other ways to do it. And I also just wanted to mention another practical thing that you can do. So whenever you're drinking water, if you can make sure it's being done in glass, that would be really awesome. And if you could just look at the water and say thank you, or like I love you, I really think that can change the world. If every person did that, it's exactly what you said. One person's actions can have such a domino effect that we can affect the entire collective. So just another easy, practical thing you can do to, change yourself, and then in consequence, change the world. And thank you all for being here. And thank you so much, Kirsten, for having me, and looking forward to the next time.
Thank you so much, Leila. That was awesome. And I'll put her links in there so you can contact her on her Instagram. And she has a website she's got some great quizzes too. Go to her website. I'm going to put it on there and check out what she's doing. And thank you, Leila. And thank you, everybody, for listening. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.